Hello, and a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure and delight to have you with us today. My name is David Roth from WPP, and I'll be moderating today's session. So, a very, very warm welcome. Before we start to dive into the content, just a few housekeeping remarks. First of all, just to let you know that this session is going to be recorded or is being recorded, and we're going to share that recording together with the slides for you afterwards. So no need to take any notes off the slides. You'll be getting those a little bit later on. Now, you've been on lots of webinars, so you know the form. There's a Q&A session to the right of your screen. Please do feel free to put any questions in that that you'd like us to cover towards the end. Don't necessarily wait till the end to do it. As the questions arise in your mind, just put them on the chat, and then we'll do our best to answer them towards the end of the webinar. And lastly, of course, given that we are going to share a lot of research with you and some data with you, we've also got an ask for you as well, which is we believe in research as well. So if you could follow the survey link at the bottom of your screen afterwards, we really would appreciate it if you could share your feedback after the webinar, because of course that really does help us make these sessions as useful and as interesting and as valuable as possible. We know that the most valuable thing that we all have now is time, and we very much appreciate the time that you're spending with us. We want to make sure that we can use it exceptionally well. So that's the beginning. Let's introduce the participants in today's webinar. A real collection of experts in their field. So I'm sure that we're all going to learn a lot from the next 45 minutes or so. So rather than me tell you who they are, it's much better if they can tell you who they are. So why don't we start off with you, Marta?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, David. My name is Marta Slukevich. I'm the VP managing globally research solutions in Similarweb. So like everything from the web intelligence, app intelligence, shopper intelligence, and market research solutions inside of Similarweb.
Great. Jesse.
Hello, I am Jesse Blant. I am a data scientist on the WPP BAV team, focused on machine learning and AI modeling of BAV data, as well as modeling the relationships between BAV data and external data sources, such as Similarweb.
Fantastic. Thanks very much indeed. Chelsea.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. I'm Chelsea Pincus, our Director of Global Strategic Agency Partnerships. So I'm overseeing all of our WPP relationships globally, as well as across the Big Six. I've been at Similarweb for about 5 years before actually coming from Group M as well, spending some time there in New York. So lovely to be here with all of you.
Well, that's a good place to come from. Sylvia.
Not from New York, but from London. Also part of the group WPP world. I'm a data strategy and insights partner. My day job is really looking after clients and their needs. On my sort of spare time, also working with David and the team as a board member for BAV, and also always looking to try to find better solutions and new innovation for the data set. Of course, also working with Similarweb for our clients and answering those KPIs as well. So working with both.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. I have to be nice to you as you're one of our board directors. And I have the privilege, amongst other things, at WPP to be the chairman of BAV. And it's in that context, really, that we have a great relationship at WPP, especially with Group M companies with Similarweb. What we wanted to do was really to fuse two things together. The first was to look at what the biggest brand data set in the world, which is BAV, is about 16 billion individual data points at the moment, and the biggest analytics of the web, Similarweb, and what would happen if we put those two data sources together, and could we generate an incremental level of insights than the insights that are derived by looking at those two individual pieces of data on their own. And I suppose the catalyst for doing this was, I suppose, a question that probably all of you have in your own minds at the moment, and that is the whole notion of, is it performance marketing or is it brand building? And we have a distinct point of view on, I suppose, squaring that particular circle or squaring that particular dilemma. Now, one of the things that might have escaped your notice, unless there are a lot of you who are taking a lot of notice on what's happening on P&Ls of major companies at the moment, is that we've seen a huge transition from 1976 to where we are now on the percentage of a company's value that's a tangible asset versus an intangible asset. And that's really important because the intangible assets on the balance sheet pretty much are the brand value, and maybe some patents that the company might have. Just the amount of pure value on the balance sheet that is the brand has overtaken the value of fixed assets, the sort of, the things that you can see, and you can walk around the factory and you can kick it and see where it's there, and the auditors can check it off on their checkbook lists, and that's really profound, and that's, I suppose, was one of the other reasons why we started to work on this particular project as the first big project together that we're going to share with you today. Because to grow a company and to grow the value of a company and to grow the share price of the value of a company, clearly, if so much of that value is in the intangible assets, which is the brand, surely increasing the value of the brand is going to have a disproportionate impact of the value of the company. And then we looked at another piece of data, which is a BAV analysis of what it is that makes a brand influential. And when you look at that share price chart of brands that are influential, you can see that over time, if this was a unit trust, the bundle of companies that we classify as influential brands, their share price increases at a significantly higher rate, so their total return. So if you'd invested, I don't know, $1,000 or $10,000 over a period of time, starting in 2015, the value of the most influential brands would be at 580, whereas the value of the NASDAQ and the S&P indices and the Dow Jones will be considerably less. So investing in what we would classify as brands that are influential generates a significant shareholders return. And if you're asking, well, what is it that you can use to increase your brand influence? It's these dimensions. It's being seen as innovative, of trustworthy, of status, of a brand that has purpose, a brand that has good performance, authenticity, convenience, fun, and a brand that is also contemporary. And now you might say, well, in addition to the share price, what does being a influential brand give you? And there are a whole series of dimensions of that. It gives you 2.4 times being purchased more regularly. It gives you 2.3 times being the shopper's first choice, and it gives you 2 times higher advocacy than average brands as well. So what we did with the team at Similarweb was to take our brands, and we started off doing this in the retail sector, that were the most influential, and have a look at the data for those brands against the Similarweb web analytics data for those brands as well as the other brands in their data set, and to help us understand how that process works. And the person who did the analytics at the BAV side, in conjunction with Marta and her team on the Similarweb side, was Jessie. So Jessie, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the process of the modeling, or being able to take those two individual data sets and be able to relate those to each other to create the report that we did, which was solving the great digital dilemma. Is it brand or is it performance marketing? And I know that a number of you have already downloaded that report, but for those of you who haven't, we'll give you a URL. You can download the report and really delve into the details, because we're pretty much going to skim the surface on a lot of this, so that we can give you a good overview of what the implications are. And in particular, I suppose, what the implications are for where your minds are probably right at the moment, which is almost the start. The bell's almost rung for the start of the holiday seasons. In a few weeks' time, we'll be in full holiday season mode. We can start to see all the merchandise being put out on the shelves at the moment. So what implications does some of this have for holidays 2024 and beyond? So Jessie, perhaps you can give us an insight into your world of data modeling.
Thank you, David. So in our BAV Similarweb collaboration, we set out to find the relationship between brand success and website traffic. In order to do this, we looked at the correlations between metrics of brand equity as measured by the BAV survey with measures of website traffic as measured by Similarweb. So we merged BAV brands with Similarweb URLs for 130 plus retail brands, and we're therefore able to measure the relationships between BAV and Similarweb data at the overall retail sector level. However, we also found that one size doesn't always fit all. So it was really helpful for us to also look at relationships between BAV and Similarweb data at the subcategory level of retail, such as mass merchandisers, as well as health/beauty. So on the BAV side, one really important metric that we found was a good driver of both brand equity and website traffic was influence, as you mentioned. So this is one metric that we really focused a lot on in our relationship calculations. And another really useful BAV metric we found was another measure of brand imagery called creativity, which was also a strong driver of both brand equity as well as website traffic. So this was another important metric that we focused on in our correlation calculations. And now I guess I'll turn things over to Chelsea, who's gonna
actually, just before you do that, Jessie, just very briefly, perhaps you can share with people who might not know, where does the BAV data come from? I mean, where does the brand data come from?
So BAV data is a survey-based data set, which means that we basically ask people many different questions. A couple of the core parts of the BAV survey is first brand equity, where we basically ask people to rate brands on various measures of the power of those brands. Another part of the BAV survey is brand imagery, where we ask people to basically rate brands or check off those brands if they associate those brands with various imagery attributes. So those are sort of one word imagery associations with those brands, such as creativity. And then the final part of the BAV survey is advocacy, where we asked people about things like brand preference, brand usage, and brand recommendation. So those are sort of some of the different parts of how we survey in order to measure the power of brands.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Chelsea, the Similarweb data set, that vast treasure trove of information.
Yes, thanks, David. Again, I'll just scratch the surface here and share specifically what was relevant to the collaboration here, in terms of what was provided to BAV and then what they kind of took away in terms of enhancing those data sets in that respect. So ultimately, I think it's important to mention, number one, because Similarweb does collect data across all websites and categories from a global perspective, we were able to have the flexibility to tailor the projects and specific insights relative to BAV and focus on the key prioritized websites under each category so that, again, BAV could then correlate our data against theirs, essentially. So to Jesse's point, we shared specifically website level data. Of course, we do have more granularity in the likes of page level, keywords, etc. We kept this on the website level, at the URL level specifically. And for the purpose of this report itself, again, we scratched the surface and really dive deepest into the metrics such as visit duration, engagement rates, unique visitors, as well as repeat visitors. To David's mention, we will be sharing the link to the report as a follow-up. So in terms of a more in-depth methodology on both sides, you can definitely find more details there, but we thought it was important to share, the source of the magic that you'll be seeing in the next few slides.
Great, thanks very much indeed. So I suppose we should play our cards now in terms of, is it brand or is it performance marketing? And I suppose the question that we have now for everybody is, why not both? It is absolutely not an either or. And actually the combination of the two is the best solution. So let's take a little dive into that. And again, as Chelsea said, there's a lot more detail and a lot more narrative in the report. So maybe Sylvia could give us a perspective, because in a sense you deal with this dilemma every day of the week. You are responsible for spending brands' money and planning the right mix of spend across their campaigns to generate the greatest return on investment. So from this study, what do you see?
Thanks, David. And you're absolutely correct. It is my daily job, having to pull sources together and really trying to find this argument and help our clients through this sort of madness of data. What we have observed in this particular report, and it is a great report, I'm sorry for pulling the plug all the time on this report that you will get later, but what we have really seen is the three main outcomes, and it's around sort of brand influence driving traffic. And what we mean by that is creativity is really important for differentiation. But what we also see is that brand influence is more reliable driver of unique visitors. So it means trusted, influential brands always and consistently outperform those brands which are highly creative but sort of less influential. We've also seen the success is all about balance. So you can't be doing one without the other, but be careful with what you do. Brands excelling in both influence and creativity are those who will really experience the best digital outcome. As we can see from this example here on the slide, what we see is Amazon and IKEA are two sort of very sort of creative but also influential brands. And what's interesting really is that they combine this creativity and the influence, and that means that their brand presence is always really strong. And finally, the sort of third outcome from this report, really, that we always talk about with our clients is the creativity is also associated with innovation. And that actually means, you know, it makes the experience fun, and it makes it even more highly correlated with engagement rates. So we'll share some more details on those and a few examples. But for now, let me just take you through some of the TK Maxx. But before I do that, I'm just going to park it for a second, because I think Marta may also have some comments to add on the findings that we had.
Marta.
Thank you, Sylvia. So absolutely, it's very important to understand that if we speak about a retail, they have always been thinking about like a traffic in the store as one of the most important KPI, even pre-digital age, right? There have been always reporting like a number of people in the store. So this is of course the most important KPI. And now thinking of it's not the shopping mall location that, you know, will attract people that are just passing by, being familiar with a brand, but they need to get acquired to the store through digital channels. It's like the brand plays very important role in this customer acquisition process. We see it with the number of the branded searches for the retailers. We see it with the number of the direct visitors. And of course, we see it with the end effect, which is the unique visitors. So in the end of the day, the traffic to the store is the outcome, but there are many impact factors, and the role of brand is one of the most important, in particular in the most competitive market segments.
Thanks very much. Why don't we have a look at the creative work, Sylvia? It's always the best bit of the presentation.
It always is, and it might just remind you that the bells will start ringing very soon. Just before, yeah, just before we press play, I'd like to sort of just mention a couple of things about this advert. This was 2023, so we have not seen 2024 yet. It should be coming out within the next month, I'm fairly certain. This was TK Maxx, one of our clients, and it's really interesting to see how they've brought that creativity back to sort of achieve their objective. So if we could play the video just for a reminder of what it was.
You don't think we're getting any sound?
No, I don't think so. And actually it would be really good to have the sound, because that was part of the whole experience, to refer.
Let's give it another go. Well, whilst we're trying to sort out the sound, maybe Chelsea, can you talk a little bit about the impact that you've measured from this commercial?
Absolutely. So yeah, to Sylvia's point, we took a look on our side in terms of measuring and analyzing the traffic kind of pre-campaign launch in terms of post-campaign relative to right when the campaign launched and also during the months thereafter. So we were able to see, specific to the UK market, that there was a 30% increase overall in engagement metrics, and an uplift basically across overall traffic, engagement rates, so on and so forth, from the launch in November and also in the months thereafter in terms of December as well. So definitely highlighted the impact there and the, I guess, you know, the continual impacts that the campaign had, that it wasn't just in the month of November, but also extended into the holiday season in December as well. So definitely looking forward to the 2024 ad and monitoring that success as well.
Great. Let's give it a go again. Do we have sound? If you could play it again and see. Well, maybe we'll come back to that.
Well, I think it will be fine without the sound. Maybe we can just see it and then we get the gist of it. And I would highly recommend, even though it is 2023, that you would go and watch it, because the sound does make it slightly more interesting. But I'll let you know what the outcome at the end is, or what the people talk outside of the music that we hear throughout.
Okay, so if it's possible to play that commercial now, that'd be great. Excellent, thank you.
Drop your glasses, shake it, face screwed up like you having hot flashes. Which one? Pick one. This one classic. Red from blind, yeah, jump drastic. Why this? Why that? Lip stop.
Jean, you buy all the farm designer outfits?
I did.
I thought we were keeping it small with the gifts this year.
Oh, I did, love.
Oh, that's my Jean.
It definitely is better with sound.
I must admit, it was really what caught me. It was the sound. So actually, this is a really intelligent way of bringing something that consumers can relate to, but also because this was actually using Gwen Stefani's "Let Me Blow Your Mind," which is not as new as 2023, but it also brought back, for those of you who remember, The Little Goat, which was a huge success back in 2020, and that this ad was actually particularly playing on the value. So if we go back to 2023, and actually we're probably still in the same position as we were then, the financial hardship in the UK was something that people were really sort of taking into account. This ad was particularly looking at you don't have to compromise the quality to your loved ones, but you could actually get more value for less money. Obviously, this has been a campaign that's been the highest ever rated campaign in terms of appeal for TK Maxx, scoring 8 out of 10. And the impact on behavior was also a record high at 7.5 points. This is significantly above the norm. So TK Maxx has become the most appealing and funniest when compared to other retailers in the UK when we look at 2023 advertising.
Right. So, a real life example of where a brand building ad has a direct impact in terms of actually what the sort of, I suppose, response that you would normally expect to get from a performance marketing campaign in terms of driving web traffic. Now, I think one of the things that Jesse touched on a little bit earlier was that these types of relationships do change depending on the types of categories. Now, a lot of the analysis that we've done is on retail and retail-related categories, as that's where we first started, and we're looking at other categories now in order to expand the look of all of this and the analysis of all of this. But maybe, Marty, you can talk to us a little bit about what we see across the different retail categories and the significance and importance of that.
Absolutely. So we speak about like a different type of the retail business with different competitiveness in their segment, and also like a different purchase cycle. So we cannot bring everybody to one basket. But when we speak about mass merchandisers, it's absolutely important to mention they must differentiate. They must be associated with something specific, like a low price of the innovation, or the very specific convenience, customer experience, something, or the sustainability, something that will make people choose this marketplace, not the other. And I think the graph, which is showing the creativity and influence merged against the digital numbers from Similarweb, and presenting Amazon, Temu at the very top, it's quite significant, because the personalized shopping experience that right now, in particular, Amazon is bringing with Rufus, but has always been investing a lot, the gamification of the in-app shopping that Temu was well known beyond the low prices, of course, and very much, targeting Generation Alpha, youngest generation, with this sort of gamified experience. This is all showing that innovation plays a significant role in particular in the mass merchandisers market.
Great. I mean, Sylvia, to what extent do we sort of see, or do you see some of this playing out with other commercials that run at different times? I think the Super Bowl is probably a good example, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. And I think we need to think about that sometimes we have a huge challenge because it's a highly competitive market, as Masters mentioned. And if we think about the sort of Super Bowl in itself, there's a real room for, I mean, Temu was one of those that invested primarily in digital brands, but what we then did was a TV investment in the Super Bowl show. But there is room to break this rules that, there is digital players now can also play on TV, but if you have enough budget, the digital native sort of brands can also really easily influence and build it really fast, as long as they have the budget to do so. So the key theme really is how do you differentiate yourself, and how do you always stand out from the crowd when obviously there is so many trying to compete for the same space.
And Chelsea, what did you see at Similarweb in terms of the impact, I suppose, both on mobile and then into the website for Temu after that Super Bowl commercial?
Absolutely. And I think in terms of the questions in the chat, this was one that was specifically, I'd say, more seamless to measure in
Yes,
terms
because
of
there are a lot of
sales.
questions here about incrementality and how do you measure incrementality. And I was thinking actually this one is, I mean, this really is, cause and impact.
Exactly. So to help with that question and answer yours, David, I would say from Similarweb side, we saw a very clear uptick and positive impact in both app usage as well as web traffic specific to Temu following the Super Bowl presence, which of course just demonstrates that strong digital impact and overall success and the uniqueness really in terms of both that brand and creative being there again outside of a particular time frame to really demonstrate the impact there, not in ideally a seasonal, period where we would see those natural organic upticks in traffic essentially.
Yeah. Let's take a quick look at health and beauty, because that's another category that's driven a lot by thematic brand ads as well as promotional activity. Marta, what do we sort of see within the health and beauty, and what's driving what here?
So here we see additional factor that we could perhaps name like a trust. So the retail brand must be like the trusted advisor. And it must, like in particular when we speak about the health, but for instance, for teenagers, beauty is so important, like that, like a trusted partner in terms of that it's advising you something best for your skin, something the most trendy is also very important. And if we speak about the younger groups, it's also a lot about the creativity. So you could see, for instance, the difference between Sephora and Walgreens on this chart, but essentially in both cases, it's, correlated with the size of visits, with the number of websites visits. But we see a strong differentiation in the brand creativity, but both of them are trusted.
And then I suppose let's get a quick look at fashion brands. An amazing amount of activity over the holidays on fashion brands, and obviously there are a lot of new players, mainly from Asia, that are really challenging the established fast fashion brands. So what do we see, Sylvia, in terms of fashion brands, creativity and influence?
Okay, so fashion brands, again, it's a huge driver of correlation, but this time we have dwell time, so time spent online on the website. we look at those who are standing out in the category, and we have seen that Stitch Fix is actually leading on several of those sort of metrics, and it's leading the way into the future for the category. So if it's investing highly on personalization and inclusivity, which Marta has talked about earlier on, it means that the brand over indexes on innovation and obviously also being contemporary, but the underlying sort of everything is the creativity.
Great, thanks very much indeed. Now, there are lots of other examples in the report, so please do download and have a look at it. Let's just turn our thoughts for the last few minutes before we move to some of the questions to the holiday sales period at the moment. And maybe a few thoughts on this, which is, I suppose the challenge that we all face and the trick that we all need to pull is what I would call double duty communications to drive the brand at the same time as driving sales, because actually the holiday period is a tremendous opportunity to introduce people to new brands, to get people to experiment in brands that they haven't purchased before or haven't purchased for other people before. But equally, clearly, this is a phenomenally important period to generate sales and for everybody to meet their annual overall sales targets. And I think one of the things, Chelsea, that has really struck me when we put these two data sets together and the work that Sylvia does in terms of planning integrated, cohesive campaigns, is now the ability to take a whole series of integrated data sets and to enable course corrections, across the campaign, as opposed to laying everything down and seeing what happens and hoping for the best. I mean, I think the example you gave, looking at the Super Bowl, where you could actually see immediately what the impact is, what the impact was, and therefore the ability to do some course correction, assuming there was going to be some more activity after Super Bowl. I mean, are you seeing more and more people? I think this is a question for both Sylvia and for Chelsea. Are you seeing more ways of integrating data sources to do course corrections across the course of a campaign, even as one as most important as the holidays? Sylvia, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I was just kind of waiting which one was going to unmute first. I think from our perspective, what's really interesting is that marketing budgets aren't necessarily growing. So we're always trying to look for optimization of campaigns. And the best way to sort of start is something that really resonates with the audience. So I think the TK Maxx was a great example of this. They were really intelligent in thinking that having the little goat, which was something that was really performing well in 2020, let's bring that back. But also it's that connection that you can't necessarily lose the value of your advertising or the quality of your product, but you have to spend less but still get the same amount, if not more engagement, both online and in store. So every day we are sort of looking for optimizations of campaigns and how to best return on ROI. And obviously Christmas is a huge, huge part of everything that we do, because it's, as you said, David, it's when most people get to the stores or online, and likewise Black Friday is fast approaching too. And that again will be sort of optimization just on the day as to how we do best for our clients, but also how do they reach more consumers.
Brilliant. Chelsea, are you finding more of your clients integrating data sets together to be able to take real-time action across campaigns?
Definitely. And I think what we're hearing across the board and how we're kind of nimbly addressing and shifting in terms of real-time optimizations is, number one, having that freshness of data, but also moreover, going closer to the bottom of the funnel to understand, to Sylvia's point, it's not just the traffic itself, but the quality in terms of, yes, engagement, but also how it funnels down to conversion in sales at the end of the day. So this is where I'd say we're, number one, leaning into more deeply the actual conversion in terms of results on specific campaigns, focusing more into keyword behavior. So again, not just overall visits to a site, but deeper into what specific product pages and what those conversions look like in terms of on-site search, specific keywords being searched, and what those ultimate lower funnel insights look like. I think the last point I'd mention is really challenging, to Sylvia's point, on the efficiency from an audience perspective. So of course, we see variance across different products, different campaigns as a result, and really going back and working with our agency partners to challenge who that target audience should actually be based on historical and moreover real-time data to actually make every dollar that you're spending from a media perspective optimally impactful, I would say. So we're definitely seeing a shift in how we're partnering with agency clients and brands in that respect.
I mean, when we started to delve into a lot of this data, one of the things was actually very interesting was the stronger the brand, the more directional the search terms were, in a sense. So it was less about category related and much more in the particular brand. But there was a huge correlation between, if you have a strong brand, you get much more of that than if you don't have a strong brand, then people are much more likely to, in a sense, find you via things that which are much more generic, much more related to the category, that don't necessarily end up in your site as well. I think one of the other things that we're beginning to see already is this is, Sylvia, you touched on it in terms of last year, but I don't think it's gone away, which is consumers are maybe not as much worried about inflation as they were this time last year, but certainly the disposable income that they have over this year's holiday is limited, and therefore this is going to be another value-driven holiday period. But I think it's important for us not to forget that the brand is an integral part of that value equation. It's not just about the cost of something, it's also about the value of it in relation to how people view the brand and the price premium they are prepared to pay for it. And I think lastly, let's all not lose sight of, there is a real magic of the and, it's driving the brand and generating sales. It's definitely not an or. Okay, well, before we address some of the questions that's that have been asked, let's take a look at, I suppose, what we would say to be our key takeaways. So brand and performance marketing, I think we've now empirically proved are no longer opposites. They're integral in each other. There is also an amazing power of creativity as a driver of digital success. We know now that influential brands outperform in the digital space, and the key dimensions of influential across the categories we looked at so far, with trust and innovation, those sort of fundamental aspects, combining great web performance data and great brand metrics enable much better strategic decision making, but also I think we've heard from Sylvia and from Marta, also tactical decision makings in order to enhance campaigns and make them specifically more impactful and a greater return on the investment that's deployed in those campaigns. And I think something for all of us to think of, and some of the work that we're now doing, is in this sort of Gen AI sort of powered future, the correlation between your digital performance and your brand power actually can be even stronger, because the Gen AI engines currently aren't being driven by augmented algorithms or people paying for performance enhancing ways of getting at the top of the search list. So I suppose what we all say, don't be afraid to focus on the brands on the upcoming holiday season. Is that a good, would you say that was a good summary, Chelsea?
Indeed. We're prepared. We hope you're prepared as well.
Good. Any last thoughts before we tackle a couple of questions, Marta?
Like in the context of the Gen AI, I think it's a very good point because we already see in, like this change, like technologically, it's just like a surprising us every month with a new, like a retailer testing their own chatbot inside of the store, with like a Tesla presenting Optimus about last week, which will very soon in 2026 bring our grocery and perhaps also the Christmas gifts for the holiday season 26. So this is all, like we are all operating in a changing environment. What I think will not change is the importance of brand and the power of brand. The brand needs to be top of mind. The cost of the customer acquisition will only increase. We will need more tech stack, more sophisticated algorithms to bring the ROI from the performance marketing. The brand power is something we could absolutely rely on, and that's for future-proof strategy.
Great. Anybody else before we move on to the questions?
We need to do this in more categories. That's what I've been asked every single time I've shared this report. Do you have this for X category? So I know it's on its way. I think there is a huge appetite for more information because everybody's thinking along the same lines.
Jesse, Marta, can you help us happen for us? Jesse?
Yeah, we can calculate more categories.
Great. Okay. Marta?
Like absolutely, we have all the data, like being more granular, and also like I'm scanning through the Q&A already, like seeing, for instance, like Amazon versus eBay is not 100% for comparison. There were nuances in the different business models in the categories we already highlighted. So like that's actually like a very fair point. In the end of the day, like companies have like a very often comparable budgets when it comes to the customer acquisition, when it comes to the brand campaigns, when it comes to like not only drive the innovation inside of the product, but also, like drive many different brand KPIs through the creative. So on one end, like I absolutely agree, like going more granular into the categories makes a lot of sense. On the other side, with the comparable budgets of like a big tech companies, not saying that Amazon and eBay is like exactly one-to-one, but like we should at least see that, with like a higher budget, with these possibilities, you could drive X results. So this benchmark is also interesting on a higher category level.
Thank you very much. You've now covered two birds with one stone because you can see the questions as I can. So you've covered one about Amazon and eBay in terms of fair comparison. There have been a number of questions already now on the Gen AI part we just briefly talked about. I know, Marty, you started to do a lot of work on looking at Gen AI search generation versus traditional search generation. Give us a glimpse of what you're beginning to uncover.
Absolutely. So that's like absolutely fascinating topic, probably for another webinar.
I think so too, yeah.
We could already start arranging this, David, but like just giving you it in a nutshell, we started to analyze like that what are the data sources that are used by the generative AI engines when giving customers the response to the prompts. What's the share of brands in the response? So that's quite fascinating. And what we see across the board, of course, there are some nuances, like it's more heavily relying on customers' reviews also on the influencers reviews, which will, probably increase the role of the influencer marketing, but also real customer reviews, from real people, for instance, who are registered Amazon users that Rufus is using right now. So we see a lot of additional factors which are, in the end of the day, increasing the role of customer experience with the product and with the brand across the journey. So not only, based on sentiment based on the ad seen on the screen, but also the entire customer journey across the funnel, including a post-purchase, right? So I think this is that if we play it well in the future and the tech stack will not get crazy like it used to happen with programmatic advertising and SEO in the past, it could really be something extremely valuable for customers and really creating advantage for amazing brands with amazing products. So that's something I would wish for. Meanwhile, we for sure see that we need to start optimizing for that ASAP, because if ChatGPT has been something for more B2B industry so far, right now it's really moving to customers, being integrated in the shopper journey more and more. Right now it's still test stage, but it's coming really soon.
That's a good warning for everybody to start to understand it. Just when we thought we'd sorted out search optimization strategies, we've now another area to look at, which I think is going to be very exciting, and create a whole series of both opportunities and stress for everybody. We've had a couple of questions about understanding the split of intangible assets between the brand and other intangibles, and are there any patterns in that, patterns to it? I would say this, that for those companies typically that aren't in the tech space, the growth of the intangibles is the brand. For those in the tech space, it's a combination of brands and patents. Of course, if you're Apple and if you're IBM, and I suppose a lot of the Chinese tech brands, especially Alibaba, who and Tencent, who have a huge amounts of patents. That's also driving the increase in the amount of intangible assets versus tangible assets in their balance sheets. So it's probably slightly 50-50 in terms of both the brand contribution to that and also the patent contribution to it. I think we've got time just to tackle one more question. And I think there are quite a few, which is about the attribution and causation. And maybe, Jesse, you could talk a little bit about the modeling of some of that and some of the issues that arise when trying to actually arrive at a true causation, I suppose.
Yeah, so in terms of the modeling, there's a couple of different metrics that we use to look at the relationship between BAV and Similarweb. One is the proportion of explained variance, which basically looks at, for example, a Similarweb metric, what proportion of the variance in that metric can be explained by a BAV metric. And then another basically main type of modeling that we did was looking at the coefficients. So basically, what is the ratio of the movement in a Similarweb metric to a BAV metric? So I would say that generally, using these two metrics, we were able to pretty effectively calculate the relationships. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've almost come to the end of our web seminar today. I very much hope that you found it useful. It's probably, hopefully, in your mind, you're asking yourselves more questions than maybe we've solved for you. We've got a lot more work to do on this as well, and we'll be sharing that with you as we do it. I'm sure that this year's holiday period will be an interesting ride across a number of dimensions across the world. But wherever you are, whether you've been good or bad, we hope you'll have an enjoyable gifting experience for yourself and your family and your friends. And we hope that the insights that we've given you will help you better balance the relationship between brand and performance marketing, so that at the end of the holiday period, not only will your businesses and the businesses that you work and represent do well in terms of their sales increases, but they would also be able to bank significant brand increases in terms of how the brand's seen by their consumers as well. So from me, all it leaves me to say is thank you very much indeed for your time in listening and watching this webinar. Please do download the report, and just to say great thanks to Similarweb, who've been a fantastic partner to us at WPP in putting these two data sets together, but in particular Marta and Jesse. And Sylvia and Chelsea, thank you very much indeed for your support and partnership, and most importantly, your insights on today's web seminar. So from me, from London and from various different places around the world, thank you very much indeed for joining. Have a great rest of the day.